All right, hello and welcome. Today we are going to go over Where Do I Live Part 2. Where do I live? So to start off, we have some nice beautiful pictures here, what's called the Milky Way. We went over the Shellium and the heavens, and now let's go over a little recap of the Shellium, the heavens, and what do we see at night? So let's go to Genesis 1 and 1. The foundation. I would submit to you the foundation of our beliefs and everything we find in Bereshit. In the beginning. Imagine that. In the beginning, Yahweh created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Ruach, the Spirit of Yahweh, moved upon the face of the waters. And Yahweh said, Let there be light, and there was light. And Yahweh saw the light that it was good, and Yahweh divided the light from the darkness. And Yahweh called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. This is where we get the evening starts the next day. And Yahweh said, Let there be a firmament. Now what? We read these, and for some reason we hop right over what Yahweh has made. Right from the beginning. The firmament, Rakia, firmament, H7549. An expanse, and a firmament, an arch in the sky. And then it goes on and says, In the midst of waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And for some reason, I don't know why, but for some reason, probably because we're told the way everything goes, is we look at this and we just automatically assume that's the water, the seas, and all this, bodies of water that we've grown accustomed to seeing. It's the ocean, it's this, but that's not what Yahweh is saying. Yahweh is saying he created the heavens and the earth, the Shellium. So we've established when we look up, we're seeing what Yahweh created, right? This is what he made. Now, when we look at these things, this is the creation of Yahweh. It don't take too many verses to figure out, is it man doctrine? Is it tradition of men? Is it what men tell us? Or is it what Yahweh has said? So if it's Yahweh spoken, if it's Yeshua spoken, if it's the word of Yahweh, we either believe it or we don't. There's so many people running around, they say they're Torah keepers, they're believers, and they're this, and they say all kinds of things, but I don't think they really understand where they live. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it rode together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. Revelation 6 and 14. Do we see now that he says, as the beginning, so is the ending? That makes sense, right? When we see Revelation and we see the beginning, it's the same thing as what he made, is it not? He stretched out. If you look at this, does that not look like something put together? Does that not look like what you would consider a scroll? Is that not what we would see here? Is that not what we see with our very own eyes at night? How about this? It looks like all you have to do is rip apart the middle, unzip it, whatever you will. And how come in the dead darkness of night, the middle of this is shining bright? I would submit to you that Yahweh is right above there, just like he says he is. That we see, because we have to understand when we put all this together, that what happens? We are in no need of the sun because we have Yahweh. Now, let's go on and let's find out a little bit further. Let's take this to the next step and read a few more verses and see what we actually see with the camera and motion detector pictures, movie pictures, whatever you will, over time. Who's moving? What's moving? The stars are moving around us. Unless this is at the very tip of Antarctica, or the very, very northernmost part of everything, no matter where you are, this is what it looks like. It's just a different setting, a different picture, if you will, but it's the same thing. So the Shelly M is moving over us. Makes sense? That's why it makes sense that what stopped doesn't never say the earth stopped moving. It says the sun stopped moving. Beautiful pictures, beautiful things. But we're also told what? Not to worship the stars, not to worship the moon. A lot of these people are going so far as they're taking and saying this and that and the other, when we know we're not to worship these things. Now, we come together on Sukkot. We have a fire. We have the fire burn for 7 days because he says so. And in this fire, we could be barbecuing. We can be having food, clean meat, and enjoying it. Sukkot is all about what? It's all about Yahweh. It's not about where you go, where you like, where you want. It's not about you. It's about Yahweh. So when we do something, we actually read that where Yahweh has put his name. The problem I would submit with many of these things and many of these places and many of these so-called congregations and whatever they're called, and why they're so what they are, they haven't established the name of Yahweh. They don't know Yahweh. They don't hear from Yahweh. They year after year have it at wherever, or they don't know wherever, or it's at Missouri, or it's in Washington, or it's in Texas, or it's in Virginia. But has Yahweh, does he come to visit there? You know, at least we see, like Benny Hinn Ministries, people coming and being healed. Whether they are or not, that's on them and that. But if we truly, as believers, come to Sukkot and come to meet with our Maker, we should be seeing extraordinary miracles. We should be seeing so many things happen and not what's the local pub. Let's go on. What do we see? We see the stars. We see what we're told they are, right? Now we're going to shift gears, so you might have to buckle up for this one and see where we're going. Because on this one, where we're going to is part 2. Where do I live? Part 2. Right? Not part 1. We should already, the thing we have to do is we have to establish where do I live, because we have to tell our children and those people around us it's just the same thing as we see growing up. We see where we live, so we tell people where we live. We tell people what's going on. The problem we see with so much of this is we don't know where we live. We don't know what's going on. We can't possibly know because we are being told by people who don't know. We're being told by people who don't care. We're being told by people who just really are accepting what is given to them. And what I mean by that is you go to school and you're taught A and B and C. We're not taught the Aleph. We're not taught the Tav. We're not taught the steak. We're not really taught ones. We think we are. In our heads, we think we are some kind of mathematicians, and some are. But the problem being is we are not usually taught the way we should be. The way that he says, teach your children diligently, right? What does diligently mean? It doesn't mean any way you want to. It means the way that he would have you teach them. Now again, I would warn you, buckle up, because here we go. Jupiter. Did you see Jupiter in the star the other night? Did you see it? They said it was so bright. This is Jupiter, friends. This is the ancient Greek god, Jupiter. If you look up every star, everything that we do, almost every day of the week, every month of the year, and yes, everything that we hear coming out of NASA's mouth is a lie. It's a made up mythical creature. It's a made up mythical god. You can look these up. You can go online and find out where Jupiter come from. I have many hours of this, and I would love to put it all on here, but for time's sake, we're just going to go right on through it. But you can look up the different ones, right? So when we look up these different things, we find out real quickly of where and what we're looking for. If we're not careful, we find Venus. This is Venus. And you may find different forms, you may find different ones, but this is another goddess, Venus. Now this is Venus as well. Statues. Is it not written that we're not supposed to have other gods before us? We're not supposed to talk of other gods. We're not supposed to have the Big Dipper, the Small Dipper. All these are directly from mythology. Greek mythology is where we get all these names, all these deities, all these things. Again, almost everything that we run into is these Greek gods, called by Jupiter, Venus, and things that we're not really supposed to have coming out of our mouth. But since we've already had them coming out of our mouth, it's probably better to teach you and learn than it is to say, just don't say that. Because when you tell somebody, just don't say that, they say, what's wrong with you? Now here's the favorite one from school. The favorite one from school, right? Everybody talks about Uranus. I wonder why. I mean, some of these things we actually know, we can feel as a child that don't make no sense. Can't we? Can't we really? I mean, when you're a child and people are making fun and telling jokes, we know it's not really a star. We know there's something wrong. We know something, so we make a joke as a child. Isn't that sad? But then we get older, we just accept the mainstream, whatever they told us. Another one. And these are the different gods. Children, his children. The Titans, the Giants, the Cyclopses, the Monalces. He is important in Greek mythology as the first supreme deity. He is the grandfather of who? And Olympus. You see, it's terrible that we don't know where we are, how we live, what we're supposed to be doing. It's so sad. And how many people are going to tell you this? By the way, the scripture specifically says, do not make an image. Do not worship the star and the moons, and do not make an image to them. Do not bow down to them. Here's your image. Why is it that man over and over and over and over goes against his creator? Folks, if anything, I don't see how the Churchianity Church can come up and say, the law's done away with, it's abolished, you don't have to do anything, because we have lackadaisical sitting on my chair people who don't think they have to do anything. And it drifts right over into the Torah, the way, all these things, Hebrew roots, whatever you call yourself. If you're not careful, you look at Churchianity, and you look at this and you go, well, at least I ain't got a statue in my yard. Or maybe you do. Maybe you ain't got a lion or a Mary or St. Peter or any of these things in your yard. But even if you don't, even if you're super Christian, you're probably talking about Jupiter, Uranus, Venus, this constellation, that constellation. Should we be doing this? Exodus 23 through 5 pretty much tells us, you shall have no other gods before me. If these ain't gods, they are gods, folks. They are what people represent as gods. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything. See, this is where they get us. Those stars are so lovely tonight. Well, look at the name of that star, and we're so inquisitive. Instead of reading our Bible, instead of finding a prophet, instead of finding a teacher, we're so set on, my favorite YouTube teacher is this guy, and he hasn't told me anything about anything, but everybody loves him. Why is it that we have congregations? The whole point of having a congregation and having 50 to 100 people is to blow their mind once a week and tell them what the Torah is really talking about, to tell us what Yahweh is really condemning. Did you imagine the apostles and what they went through? I know why they don't, and you know why they don't, or I'll tell you why they don't, because they don't want to run their congregation off. They don't want everybody to go, well, look at this, and you say, oh, that's pagan. Please don't say that in the congregation. Say what you will in your car on the way here or in your house or whatever, but remember, Yahweh says not to do it. So please don't do it here. And they get offended and run off because you tell them the truth. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven or above the earth, beneath or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. This is exactly what they have done. They've made gods out of the stars. They have made God's names out of the stars. Do you know what the end of this is going to be? Let's read some more. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them nor serve them. Exodus 23 through 5. Is it any wonder that in Revelation he says he's going to destroy all these things? I believe Isaiah, Daniel, he's going to destroy them and take the tops of the mountains and level the mountains. Why would he do such a thing? Maybe because this is what we put on top of our mountains, on top of our high places. Another one. And his name's there. He's another God. Now, for it to be said, these are wooden, stone things, right? So I'm not acknowledging them as gods or a god, but to others. And this is what Yahweh is speaking of when he says don't have other gods. Right? This is exactly what he's saying. He's saying don't carve images, don't do it, don't have them up there. This is the same thing. Here he is. He is a God of fire. That's why he's got an anvil and he's making things of fire. See, these may seem like it's no big deal. And to most people say, oh, so what? But if it's in your town, how's your town blessed? If it's a part of what you're doing, if it's coming out of your mouth, if it's coming on your radio station, like it does in Birmingham, Alabama, if they make it a god, then what is it? But I know NASA told me, look up NASA, deceive in Hebrew. Ain't it funny how NASA, you spend around, almost spells Satan, Hasatan. Look at that, how it fits so perfectly. Well, would NASA lie to me? Come on now. You're going too far with this NASA thing. You're talking too much about what would they... Come on. Right? I mean, how could they lie to us? How could they tell us? Why would they do such a thing? Money, greed, folks. Money and greed. That's a high altitude picture. What do you see? You tell me. Do you see the stars right there within the firmament, just like it looks like? Do you see the earth as it is? Or do you see something different? Pictures don't really lie. I mean, if you bend them and Photoshop them and CGI them, then yes, you can have, dragons flying and all kinds of things like we see in the movies. But when you actually use a hot air balloon, or you use a helium balloon, or you use many things that we've seen on YouTube, this is what it really looks like. What is that right there? We have the Yarek and we have the Meshe. The Yarek, and this is where a lot of people get the calendar wrong. They don't know the difference between the Yarek and Kodesh and fullness and all that, but that's a whole different story. But that is the Mishi. That is the sun. That is what the greater light, if nothing else, that Yahweh made. Don't look like it's that far away. If you look underneath it in a lot of different shots, it looks like it's a spot right underneath it, just like a flashlight or something would look. So, what do you say it looks like? What do you think? Look up NASA. You may find a dragon. You may find things that are historically proof. If you also look, it has a sun and a moon. Why would they deceive you with the sun and the moon? Why does Yahweh Almighty say not to worship the sun and the moon? Don't you think he's giving us some insight? Don't you think he's trying to tell us of what's going on, why the dragon has the sun and the moon? And notice again, it's not a full moon. It always seems to be that Islam crescent moon. I don't know why people think they have to follow something that's not biblical. There is no crescent moon. There is no third moon. There is no dark moon. We're never, ever, ever, ever called to follow any moon other than fullness. We're never, ever called to do half a third of the Torah. We're never, ever called to do a third of anything. And the only time, I think there's only 2 or 3 verses in Revelations that talk about a third or slight of the moon. And when is that? That's right, boys and girls. That's at the end of time. That's a sign for the end of the times. But until then, we are still on this planet. This plain T, if you will. Now, have you ever seen a transmission in space? Me neither. But that kind of looks like one. If you're a mechanic, you probably know what I'm saying. It looks just like a transmission in space. Now, you've seen these pictures before, and they're high altitude pictures. They're very high. We've not seen one. This is what they say is in that space. Do you see all that? If all this was true, you would probably eventually at least know somebody that had one crashing through their front yard, smashed their car, smashed their thing. And I really hate to say things like this because next week on the news, or a month or 6 months, guess what we might hear? Out of all the years, we never unheard of something like this happening. But how can that be? How can it be when we look up, we see what Yahweh says, Genesis 1 and 6, the firmament. But we're told we don't see that. We're told we see something different, right? We're told we see this other thing that looks more like that. And there's a close-up. Now, just because this is here, don't mean it's not covered. That's just another one. I had another one that it's completely covered, speckled out. You can't hardly see it. It's so speckled out. So again, do we believe what the world says? Or do we believe what Yahweh says? And it's pretty simple. It's pretty easy because Bibles had pictures like this in them. Bibles really had documentaries of things like this in it. And you read where Moses was doing what? Moses had a problem with them, and he said, pick on whose side you want to be. And I believe it was 3,000 got swallowed up. Well, I'm sure they didn't get kicked out of the bottom of the earth, did they? Or did they? You tell me. Did they or did they not? Did they get flushed away in space or did they go to the underworld? Waters below, the firmament, waters above, the realm of Yahweh. We read that Noah did what? We read and we see pictures of evidence. We see evidence of what actually happened, right? Now, it's not just me, folks. I know it's hard to believe because when you first hear this, a lot of people lose their minds and say, well, wait a minute. But it's not just me. It's your Bible. It's not just your Bible. It's ancient cultures. Almost every culture believed of what the scripture says. The stars are in the firmament, the sun and the moon. The only difference is they worshipped the sun and the moon. They started naming them. That's right. Our good old buddies, the Mayans, they believe the same thing. Notice the firmament, notice the sun, the moon, the stars. They all knew. Just like if you can look up that little clip. I tried to get it on here, but for some reason it didn't work out. But you can look it up yourself in Men in Black. Oh, everybody knew the earth was flat until 500 years ago. There's maps. There's ancient things, again, that show exactly what the pictures show. Exactly what we see. So what are these stars, you say? What are these stars? What can they be? What is this what I'm looking at? Well, if you believe the Bible, if you believe the scriptures, I can say, then you would believe what the scriptures tells us they are. We've seen these even in our nursery books. If you ever went to the doctor and the dentist in the 70s or 80s, maybe even late 90s, guess what you seen? These little books. Anybody ever remember seeing them little books in the doctor's office? And it shows the sun inside the firmament, the stars inside the firmament, the moon. Oh no, Chicken Little, the sky is falling. It's amazing that the stuff that we have seen. Now again, it's time for us to know where we live. It's time for us to call what we call. It's time for us to believe what we believe or not believe it. But the ancients believed this is what it looked like. Now that's a hard shell thing, right? There is no getting out. There is no breaking through. There is none of this. Plus, if you'll look, the portals. And we'll go into Enoch or talk about Enoch. If you believe Enoch, he says there's portals. You see these little places. They are portals where the sun and the moon come and go. They're portals for things that come in and out. Now, I believe you might be following now of the windows of heaven will be opened. I'll pour out a blessing upon you. I'll pour out the rain in its latter time. I will pour out these things upon you. So when Noah's day, if there wasn't any rain, where did it come from? Outer space? Did it just come from vacuum of nowhere? Nuclear bombs don't work the way they work without a firmament. And you sure can't shoot the firmament if it don't exist. You can look up Operation Dominic, 1951. You can look up Operation Fishbowl. And it might blow your mind and probably upset you if you're anything like me to know that the government has been shooting the firmament since, probably about 1951. I don't know about you, but, maybe a BB gun, maybe a .22 rifle, maybe we could fly up there and take a peep. Maybe that would be kind of the way I would go with this. But no, if you look up Operation Fishbowl, and please do, this is government stuff. This ain't like I'm making things up. This is government things. They shot the firmament with nuclear. Not a 22, not a shotgun, not a M60, nuclear missiles. And there's footage of it. So it's amazing that they've done this in 1951. It's amazing. I believe we're even still here. You want to talk about grace and mercy? There it is. There's your grace and mercy. Oh, yeah. But remember, he also said man will be his own destruction. And this is not for anything other than knowledge. The body needs knowledge. The body needs to know where we live. We need to know what's going on. Because if we don't know where our Heavenly Father is, if we don't know where rain comes from, if we don't know how the flood happened, how can we tell somebody else? Well, how did this all happen? How did this all happen? How did all this get flooded? Well, pretty easy if this is all water on top, and he opened the windows or the portals of heaven, and it flooded for 40 days. Pretty easy. Pretty easy answer. The problem is, I'll tell you the problem. The problem is most of these people that are talking and YouTubing and congregationing, they don't hear. They don't even, I don't know if they even ask. They come up with all these things and it doesn't matter. I would submit to you it all matters from a childlike view. It matters where I live. It matters to me. It should matter to you. It matters to me where things are and how it works. Because if I don't know, how can I explain to somebody, well, my Elohim is the creator of heaven and earth. But you have no clue of what you live on. You have no clue of what you're doing. You have no clue of these things. Right? Not one clue do we understand of what's going on. Isn't that a sad thing? Isn't it really terrible that we don't know? Oh, I forgot. I will answer that question before we close. Because people I know are saying, well, what are the stars? What do I call them? What are the stars? What does this mean? How, if I can't call them this, what should I call them? Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner. No chicken dinner. I like that one. All right, Revelation 1 and 20. Come along. Revelation 1 and 20. The mystery. It even tells us it's a mystery, folks. What is the mystery of the stars? The mystery of the 7 stars which thou sawest in my right hand, and the 7 golden candlesticks. The 7 stars are the angels. Stars are angels. Of the 7 churches, and the 7 candlesticks which thou sawest are the 7 churches. I'm going to step out on a Torah limb here, if you will, and tell you just what it says. The stars are angels, and maybe those 7 brightest ones that people call by other gods' name might be the ones that he's talking here. Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be very offensive that he says these 7 angels, these 7 ones are in charge of the 7 churches? Then how do we not know what we're talking about? How can you be a church? How can you be a deacon? How can you be a pastor? You don't know these things, and you're right on board with everything garbage that's coming down. Folks, we have to get teachers. We have to get people that are anointed. If we don't, we have chaos. Year after year, Sukkot after Sukkot, people get sick, they get hurt, they end up with flus, colds, and problems because people direct them to the wrong dates, the wrong times. Well, how do I know that? Well, is it raining? Is it cold? Is it snowing? Did your tent get blown away in the wind? Did it get flooded? If anything's happened, you know, it's almost like that. What was the bill said? Here's your sign. It's probably not the right date. Because we see right through history and right through verses, he made the heavens and earth. They are our witnesses. So one more time, we'll go through a couple verses before we close. Revelation 1:20, the mystery of the 7 stars which thou sawest in my right hand, and the 7 golden candlesticks. The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 candlesticks which thou sawest are the 7 churches. Into the angel, Revelation 2:1. Into the angel, I say it one more time, into the angel of the church of Ephesus write these things, saith he that holdeth the 7 stars in his right hand, who walketh in the midst of the 7 golden candlesticks. These should be like hand and glove. The angels of the church, what was the angels? What from the beginning was Adam? In a way, he was the king of the earth, without mention, without a crown, he was dominion. He had dominion over everything, right? He said, lion, come here. You're a lion. Yes, sir. Hey, come here. You're a giraffe. Yes, sir. Everything he named, it was so. You see what happened? Because of sin, we have problems. We have wisdom problems. We have all kinds of problems. And then we have the enemies, and men come in. And men is probably just as bad, if not worse, than our enemy. Our enemies, I should say. Right? We're worried about Beliar coming out of hell and slapping you upside the sidewalk. When really, what goes on in here and what comes out of here is probably more abominable than what he could ever do to you. Especially as a child of the Most High, what can they do to you? Without his permission, the answer is nothing. Job, without his permission, nothing. Spare his life. And even if we have to go through something, usually we are learning we done it wrong in the first place. And into the angel of the church, Revelation 3:1, and into the angel of the church in the Sardis, write, these things saith he that hath the 7 spirits of Elohim, and the 7 stars. I know thy works, and I know thou hast a name, that thou livest and art dead. Revelation 6:13. And the stars of heaven fell into the earth. Because, see, I know a lot of people say, well, that's a whole different thing, them stars there, than these stars that I'm looking at. Revelation 6:13. And the stars of heaven fell into the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. The stars are going to fall into the earth. It's going to happen, and what we're going to see is going to be either horrific or something else to see. Now, one more thing before we go. That's right. But wait, there's more. If you would look up Lucifer, you might find that Lucifer is what? What was Lucifer? A star. The star of bearing light was Lucifer, right? So we might have to be careful of what we call things and what we look, because those lights and those things, and if he was a star, don't you think he has a way to get our attention? Don't you think he has a way to actually see and to get us from doing other things? If he is that star, if he is that, or he was that, then what do we see? So if you can look it up for yourself, but Lucifer was a star. So we have to be careful, folks, when we go and call things what NASA and other things say, and what Joe Bob says, and even the pastors say, because those stars are 7 angels. We have all kinds of verses and all kinds of proof that we need to share with each other, that we need to know. We need to, and I know that's crazy talk. I know that's this, I know that's that, but either we believe the scriptures or we don't. The ancients pretty much laid it out for us. We can believe the scriptures. We can believe that Yahweh in the beginning made the heavens and the earth, and he stretched forth the firmament. Whether it's day or night, we still see the firmament. Right? During the day, we see that blue water sky. During the night, we see the stars that are the lesser lights. It even tells us these are the lesser lights. How did we let this get by us? How did we not know these were angels? Now, there's a whole nother study in this for part 3. What happened before Noah? Did they forget this knowledge? Did they not adhere to this knowledge? Did they not know that the stars are called watchers? That's right, the stars are called watchers, and they are there to watch over us. You ever wonder how every word that you say is going to be held against you? Every idle word that you say? If you look up and you go out at night, how far is it? It says, beware of entertaining angels. Beware, even if an angel come and preach another gospel to rebuke them. What's he telling us, folks? So again, part 3 is going to be what happened with Noah. What did they just forget that there was watchers above their heads? Did they just forget what was going on? Or did they make it go on? And I would submit to you, surprise, surprise, that man once again might be the downfall and the reason, yet again, for sin and for fallen angels. So until next time, may Yahweh bless you. May his kindness shine upon you. May he grant you shalom. Shalom, and may Yahweh bless you greatly. Shalom.